What was the best moment you've seen where the real world hit a spoiled rich kid? Story 1. When I was a teenager, my sister saw through our windows that there were two guys getting into her car. We ran downstairs as fast as possible and caught them in the act. One managed to run away, but the other one froze and didn't run away. He couldn't have been much older than me. My sister called the cops, and the kid kept looking at us and trying to find a way to escape. My sister said, "Run if you want. My brother will catch you." The cops came, and so did his parents. His mom drove a freaking amazing car, and the lady looked furious and sad. She was dressed really nice and looked like she was pretty successful. As soon as she got out, she began yelling, "Why? We give you everything. You have everything. Why would you try to steal? Don't we give you enough?" The kid just seemed to shrink and get smaller. Don't get it. Freaking jerkwad. I hope he turned his life around and began to be around better people. I want to know what the deal is with the guy that ran away. Was he from a rich family too? Was this more about the thrill? I bet if it is, he convinced the kid that got caught that he wouldn't get caught. Story 2. Saw a college guy with a ridiculously expensive car, can't remember the model, rear-end this woman who drove an absolute beater. Her car was definitely totaled, and he wasn't looking that hot either. He got out and started screaming at this woman. She was in tears. He kept telling her that she was going to pay for this. When the cops came, I saw each of them give their statements. After that, me and like 10 people came forward and gave our witness statements. It sounded like each and every one of us put complete fault on him, which was the truth. When the cops went back to him, I saw his face just sink. He probably told them it was her fault and just found out that 2 handfuls of people just confirmed that he's full of nonsense. I've never seen that many witnesses stick around for a simple traffic accident. I think the other people felt the same way. That kid was a douche and should be punished for what he did. I think many of us all feel this, but on a bigger scale. Many of us feel like there's all these more powerful and richer people in control deciding things for us. I think we feel powerless and that we can't do anything about it. Even if people may agree that these people are at fault, they seem to get away with everything. I think that's what collectively brought these people to come down on this kid to try and make him behave and face the consequences of his actions. Believe me, we'd like to do more to more powerful people. Story 3. One of my college roommates was very rich growing up. Didn't realize just how rich until I had to explain to her what a coupon was in very extensive detail. On multiple occasions, she bragged that she wasn't even interested in her major, philosophy, or college in general, but she was at uni because her parents were requiring her to get a degree, any degree, in order to get access to her trust fund. I don't remember ever seeing her go to class, and she eventually got expelled sophomore year over academic dishonesty. I guess this was the last straw for her parents because they cut her off pretty soon after that. This actually served as a wake-up call. She somehow managed to get a public health degree at a school in spite of the academic dishonesty listed on her transcript. She's doing pretty well for herself these days. We've kept in touch, and last we talked, she was considering grad school. It's nice we have a story that has a positive ending. Unfortunately, some of us have to hit rock bottom before we decide to turn around. Here's to all those people that can turn around before they see that brick wall coming at them. It's good to know this person is doing well for herself. Story 4. One of my college roommates told his parents the trip we were planning that they were paying for was $400 more expensive than it was, so he could have a really nice recreational glass tube. In addition, they basically paid for everything he wanted. He had their credit card and ordered food on it at least once a day. He also would make $50 purchases off the card pretty regularly. Long story short, they found out he lied about the cost of the trip. For whatever reason, they still paid and let him go, but after the trip, he could not use their card anymore. The dude acted like he lived the hardest life of all time afterwards, but eventually sucked it up. He actually acts way less entitled now, and ended up having a lasting positive effect for him, even though he wouldn't admit it. Story 5. I went to school with a kid who always had a new fancy car or truck because his dad owned one of the biggest construction companies in the area. This kid was a major douche and triple parked his big trucks all the time. Once he got some sort of fast fancy car and went over 110 miles per hour. and was getting chased by state police. He had friends in the car that were telling him to stop and slow down, but he wouldn't. I believe he was also drunk, but he ended up crashing into a business doing a ton of damage. He got hit with 3 or 4 felonies. Driving over 100 miles per hour is a crime in most states. And he got multiple kidnapping charges because the passengers were freaking out. Dude never came back to school, and I have no clue what he's doing now. Edit. To clarify, it was on normal street roads, not the freeway or highway. Edit 2. My bad. Not a felony for driving fast, but for the attempted kidnapping. Story 6. Somewhat distant relative spent all of his university years and 20s partying hard with the $120K allowance his rich company-owning father gave him each year. He'd travel the world each year, going to Bali, Thailand, Europe, every year Oktoberfest, just rampaging. At 32 or so, he decided to settle in an upscale ski resort area of the U.S. and open a business with his hot gold digger fiancée. When he went to transfer his money to his U.S. bank account, he noticed it only came to a few $1,000s. He angrily asked the bank worker why she hadn't transferred the entire amount, only to be told that that was the entire amount. His father had cut him off without saying anything, and he just hadn't noticed. Absolute flatline. There's got to be a story there. Was there ever a discussion where the father told him that this allowance was going to end at some point? It seemed like he was somewhat going to settle down and start a business. In some way, he was leaning towards being responsible. What was this business he was going to open up? Was it viable? There's a few questions here I need answered. Story 7. Freshman year of college. The guy across the hall from me is a spoiled rich kid from a big southern city. Old money clearly coming out his butt. A couple weeks into the second semester, he and a buddy found a checkbook on the sidewalk. Stupid jerkwads decided to write themselves a check and cash it in the bank that the account is in. The teller immediately called the cops and they both got arrested. We talked the night he got arrested and he laughed and said his dad would take care of it and everything would be fine. That weekend, we met his dad as they moved everything out of the dorm since his dumb butt got expelled. Guess Daddy didn't take care of it. Story 8. Rich, scummy injury lawyer's kid was in my class in high school. Goes to college, mid-sized school in the Midwest, and gets plastered drunk. Parents bought him and his friends alcohol since freshman year, so nothing new. And RA says he has to write him up for alcohol in the dorms. Punches 2 RAs, then gets cops called on him and knocks a cop's tooth out. Long story short, his parents have to drive back 6 to 7 hours after 1 day to get him, and he's not even allowed to leave the state until his hearing. Last heard, he's working at a fast food establishment. Story 9. While working in a casino here in Las Vegas, a herd of girls came to my window, and one proceeded to tell me about her great birthday party itinerary that her dad had paid for her 18th birthday, with no adults in the party. Just a bunch of teenage girls out in Vegas, where none of them could do anything because none of them were 21. I couldn't even check them into their reservation. They started yelling and screaming at me. Calmly call security, and security tells them they can either go play in the arcade or leave and try to find a hotel off the strip that will take them in without being 21. The anger turns to tears. The security guard is unmoved. That's their parents' fault. A stupid 18th birthday gift. This sounds like an example where the parents are too rich to understand how the world works. I can only assume that they maybe thought that 18 was when you could do things in Vegas. I lived in Vegas for a bunch of years. It is really hard to find activities for kids under 21 to do. Why? Because the activities people in Vegas want people to do is the stuff that gives money to people in Vegas. Gambling, drinking, seeing shows. Just paying a chaperone would have probably solved this problem for this group of kids. Story 10. My best moment was when I got hired by a pair of Woodside, California parents to transition their horrible 18-year-old into the realities of real life, something that evaded both of them. My first action was to take away his platinum limitless credit cards. He threw a tantrum that lasted several days. Where am I going to get money? Get a job. My parents will fire you. They didn't. When he realized that boundaries and budgets had been set in stone, and that he not only had to pay the bills, the rent, but taxes too, he headed straight to college to wait out the next 4 years. He's still a little jerk, but at least he has a job and an education now. Story 11. No joke here. Back in high school, 90s, this kid got a brand new Chevy Camaro. Had an old 80s Pontiac Phoenix that had the straight six. It was by far not a racing car, but this tool was just looking to brag at what he got compared to the busted cars we got. About 2 days later, while we were waiting at a stoplight, this idiot tries to race us as I was in my car and pulled up with my friends. He starts by revving it really loud and tries to do a burnout. Mind you, the light was red and the roads were not wet, so he managed to get a tiny burnout going, some smoke and whatnot. When his tires did catch traction, he barreled into the intersection and smashed the car of the wife of one of the very few cops in my small city. Needless to say, that didn't work out for him very well. Story 12. Nothing too serious, but I taught at an international school in Africa, and we would take the high school students camping 1 week out of the year. Most of these kids are not used to camping at all, and have never even taken public transport. They have full-time drivers bring them to school and pick them up. Some of them are from very wealthy and politically connected families. Having to set up tents and get dirty, not be able to shower every day, and sleep on hard ground is new to them. Some of them actually love it, but others are sad, pathetic wretches the entire week. Nothing is the great equalizer like camping. I'm curious to talk to those kids who liked camping. I'm curious to see what their parents are like. I'd almost bet real money that those parents are much more well-grounded than the other parents. It might also be a situation where the kid knows this is a temporary situation and won't have to deal with it forever. I just really hope that this gives them some perspective on how people that are not as rich as them live. Story 13. Administration and faculty at a university refused a substantial offer of endowment money from a couple that wanted their son enrolled as an art major. Their son couldn't meet the minimum scholastic entrance requirements, and he had little aptitude for art. Still, with their millions, he thought money would buy his way to an easy degree as an art major. He was dumbfounded to receive a notice of non-admittance. Kreis in German. Story 14. Local rich kid had his SUV parked in a no parking area at a club. A tow truck showed up to tow it away, and the kid went ballistic. "Do you know who my dad is?" etc. to the driver. After a minute or two of this, the passenger gets out of the tow truck, and he is a full-patch Hell's Angel. The biker politely tells him it doesn't matter who he thinks his family is, and the SUV is towed away. One of my former friends left his day job to open his own tow truck company. His favorite response to people saying things like this is, "That's your dad? That's awesome. He certainly can afford the towing fee then." Who thinks that "do you know who my daddy is" line works in this day and age? I'm not dealing with your daddy, kid. I'm dealing with you. Do you know who your daddy is? Then you know how he's going to flip his lid when he finds out what you did to the car. Story 15. Middle school. A classmate is on the phone, when most of us didn't have cell phones, screaming at her stepdad. "Patrick, I need the $500. I need to buy new jeans." She did not get the $500, but she did later get to be a teen mom. So that was cool. Edited to add. She wanted multiple pairs of jeans. This was when bootcut, skinny, and bedazzled jeans were all equally popular at our school. She was not going to spend $500 on one pair. Raise your kids and spoil your grandkids. Story 16. Kid I knew won a cool million off a scratch ticker when he was 19. Acted like a big shot, arrogantly buying rounds of drinks for entire bars. Didn't do jack for 20 years. Then I got the last alcohol check. Alcoholic. No savings, no assets, no skills. He's now in and out of hospitals for alcohol poisoning and mental breakdowns. Lost his paper hat job, his girlfriend, everything. To be fair, if I had $1 million handed to me at 19, I'd probably be dead. I'd love to say I could handle this so much better than this kid if I had that kind of money, but I don't think so. If I'm honest, at 19, I really wouldn't know the value of money. If I got it now, yeah, there are plans that would be put in place. Again, it goes back to the parents raising their kids. At least put it in a high-yield savings account. At the very least. Story 17. I knew a guy in high school who bragged that he didn't have to pay attention in school because, get this, his grandfather was a vice president of the corporation that supplied the cardboard for cereal boxes for General Mills. Real gravy train, you know? Last checked, since deleted Facebook, he was still working at Best Buy 5 years after high school, the same job he had in high school. I don't think my father, the inventor of toaster strudel, would be too pleased with this. Story 18. Oh, I have one. I used to work at Starbucks, and there was a girl that was just newly hired and in training. Mind you, she was 20 years old, and her parents made her get a job. She grew up in a very wealthy family. On her first or second day, I instructed her to do the dishes to help catch us up for closing. She looked at me with those lost eyes and told me she doesn't know how. Apparently, she grew up with housemaids and literally has never cleaned a dish in her entire life. I had to teach her step by step how to clean a dish. But she learned on the job instead of throwing a tantrum and walking out. This story is different from the other ones. I don't think this is a bad kid. It's good that she was willing to learn and not be all arrogant. Maybe she'll be willing to see how other people live. If the parents had troubles with this kid's attitude, maybe teach her how to do some basic chores. They're the ones that seem a little out of touch. Maybe they don't realize they're spoiling their girl a little too much. Story 19. I knew one who apparently couldn't fathom how people live on a budget. We used to hang out a lot at her insistence, but she liked to eat at expensive places, whereas I'd have no issues having my meals somewhere cheaper. However, she kept pouting and insisting I stay. I said I couldn't unless she wanted to spot me. She didn't. Then I walk her through the math and show her that the cost of my meals with her every day totaled my entire wage for the month. She didn't stop pouting, but from then on could eat by myself in peace. Story 20. Know a guy whose dad was the CEO of a Fortune 500 company for around 10 years. Was playing video games on Discord with him earlier in the year when he drops this beauty. My dad isn't paying for my rent anymore. I can't believe how hard budgeting is when I have to pay for my own rent. I can only go out drinking once a week now. Have you guys always had to watch what you spend this closely? He turned 25 this year and has been out of college and working for 2 years. Story 21. Knew a rich kid whose parents bought a car for her, and he treated it like absolute garbage, purposely driving it really hard and generally abusing it, confident in the notion that his parents would buy him the one he wanted after he destroyed the one they got him. Well, they didn't buy him another one, ever. He rode the city bus and bummed rides off of friends after that. He was the most entitled jerkwad I've ever met. If he was over at your house, he would just help himself to whatever was in the fridge like it was some sort of paid buffet. That I won't tolerate. I wouldn't even dream of even asking someone if they had any food to eat if I was visiting them unless they offered. I wonder what else this kid tried to help himself to. Again, you kind of have to wonder how the parents treated their kid. I think this kind of behavior was learned from watching the way their parents acted. Story 22. I had a roommate my freshman year of college that came from an incredibly rich oil family from the Middle East. I remember him having the hardest time adjusting to not having someone else prepare him food. I remember waking up one morning and going to the kitchen and seeing him try to eat eggs and toast he had just prepared himself. He asked me how to normally prepare fried eggs because his were really crunchy. Turns out he had just cracked the egg whole into the pan and prepared it shell and all. I couldn't stop laughing, but felt really bad for the dude. At least he tried. Story 23. There was a kid in my school class who was a trust fund baby, and he acted like it. He was picking on people one day, just talking unnecessary junk, and he called a girl a cow. She was overweight. He then got punched by a special education kid in class. And then, when he contemplated retaliating against the special education kid, he then got punched by another student who was not special needs. He did not contemplate punching him. Story 24. Local business owner put son through college and more. When a kid graduates with multiple degrees, dad decides to retire and turn over business to son. Son brings college cronies on board, has management all wear white cowboy hats and drive white pickups, and begins revamping business. Dad comes out of retirement pronto, gets rid of son and cronies. Years later, bankrolls son's run for state rep. The son lost. Dad dies and leaves business to daughter. Kudos to the dad for knowing when to take back over. I have a feeling the kid bought his multiple degrees rather than earn them by studying. Why did the dad bankroll the run for state rep? What changed between the failing business and this? And what is this son doing now that the daughter owns the business? Story 25. About 10 years ago, I was having a pint with a friend of mine. His family excreted gold, I swear. I mentioned I was struggling with rent and bills while in college, and he just said, "Get your mom to pay for it then, mate. She's disabled, and we've never had real money." He instantly realized what he said and did feel bad about it. I think it was the first time he really understood that not everyone has their parents to lean on financially. Story 26. In a country with high alcohol taxation, rich kid enters a pub, like 10 or 12 of them, throw cards at the bartender, demanding shots. "What would y'all like?" "Whatever, dad is paying." Bartender pours double 3W blues for all the brats and some randoms that they treated. The brat with the card has tears in his eyes when the tab came in. "Dad's going to kill me." I did enjoy the free whiskey, though. Story 27. I knew a kid in high school whose parents were loaded. When he got his driver's license, they bought him a $70,000 Mercedes. Within a month or two, he totaled the car while driving drunk. Parents pulled strings to get him out of the full weight of the DUI, and they bought him another $70,000 Mercedes. He overdosed on a big load of pharmaceuticals and booze when he was 23. He's dead. Hell, that was a blunt ending. I was gonna say something about this story, but that ending. I just feel sorry for the parents. I'm not even gonna make any comments about their parenting. No matter your feelings, I don't think anybody should outlive their kids. Story 28. I knew this rich kid from high school that went off to college and partied every single night. His parents found out that he was failing basically all of his classes, so they secretly drove up early one Saturday morning with the spare set of keys to the car they had bought him and just drove off with the car. Story 29. Here's a switch. A highly successful local doctor and politician expects son to attend medical school and become a doctor. Son opts out, gets a job with a new company called Costco, pumping gas. He's been with that company ever since. Just his regular pay raises and bonus checks give him a good life. He just didn't want the high-stress life his dad had. Story 30. That one Instagram model who got caught on video talking junk to a security guard at VidCon. Not only did the guard stand his ground and not let him in, because he wasn't famous enough to be given a pass and too rich to just buy one, but once the internet saw the video, the guard ended up with more followers than the kid. Ah yes, the social currency. There are some things that money can't buy. Respect and manners is one of them. I hope that guard actually leveraged what he had well. Hopefully he was able to do something good with it. Story 31. Classmate in college failed his course. Partied for a year with daddy's money. Never studied. Ever. Thing is, inheriting his father's construction company, 2 quarries, a fleet of trucks and equipment, depended on him manning up and passing the class. All he had to do was learn the basics of mechanical diagnostic and repair and be set for life. Story 32. Dad buys a rich kid a Mercedes. It was pinkish, salmon-colored, so the kid complained about it. Dad took it away, sold it, and never bought him another car. Rich brat had to buy his own. Story 33. Spoiled rich kid shows up to school in a $325,000 sports car. He was showing off, lost control of the car, and drove it through a brick wall and totaled it. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.